I waited alone for 2 hours at the wine bar I'd rented, cake untouched, playlist queued. Nobody came. Not even a "oh sorry I can't make it" text. But 7 days later, my sister messaged the family group chat. "Hey, everyone, baby shower in Maui. It's $2,200 per person. Send money by Friday." That's when I knew this wasn't just neglect. This was abuse. The wine bar buzzed with low laughter and clinking glasses, warm amber lights casting gentle shadows over polished wooden tables. Ethan sat at a corner booth, his shoulders straight but his hands restless, fiddling with the napkin, adjusting the unlit birthday candles on a small chocolate cake he'd brought himself. He checked his phone again. 7:14 p.m. Maybe they were stuck in traffic. Maybe Ava had to deal with the kids. Maybe Dad forgot to remind Mom. He glanced around, pretending not to feel the rising sting in his chest. The bartender caught his eye, offering a polite smile. Ethan smiled back, thinly, and looked away. 7:45, still no calls. No texts. No footsteps rushing through the door with apologies and hugs. Just the soft jazz music humming through the bar's speakers and couples lost in each other's worlds. He tried to distract himself by scrolling through his phone. Photos of hiking trips, Sunday brunches, old text threads with his sister filled with emojis and jokes. It all felt distant now, like a different life. One where he was remembered. By 9:30 he had stopped pretending. The cake sat untouched, its frosting glistening under dim lights. He had ordered a glass of Pinot Noir earlier just to look occupied. The bartender, a man in his 20s with tired but kind eyes, gently placed another drink in front of him. "On the house," he said quietly. "Happy birthday." Ethan looked at him, startled. He hadn't said a word to anyone about it. "Thanks," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. He sat in silence for a while longer, then slowly blew out the unlit candles. There was no wish to make. Only a hollow ache in his chest he couldn't quite name. At 10 p.m., he stood up, left the cake behind, and stepped into the cool Seattle night. The city lights shimmered around him, indifferent. He walked slowly, alone, trying to convince himself it was just a misunderstanding. But the silence in his phone and the weight in his heart told another story. No one had remembered. And that truth, more than anything, was what hurt the most. A gentle rain tapped against the window of Ethan's apartment as he sat at his desk, nodding along to a Zoom presentation he wasn't really listening to. His laptop screen was filled with smiling faces and muted voices discussing branding strategy, but Ethan's mind was elsewhere, still lingering in the empty wine bar, still hearing the echo of silence where laughter should have been. He sipped cold coffee, his fingers hovering over the trackpad, until a faint ding broke through his daze. A message. Family group chat. He clicked without thinking. "Ava, hey fam. Big news, baby shower in Maui. June 14th to 17th, beach villa booked, activities planned. It's gonna be magical. Cost is about $2,200 per person. Please RSVP by next Friday. Love you all." Ethan stared at the screen. Read it again. And again. "No, sorry we missed your birthday. No, are you okay?" Not even a belated, happy birthday. Just pastel emojis and a price tag. His heart gave a soft, unexpected crack. Not loud or dramatic, but sharp and precise. He muted the meeting without thinking, suddenly unable to breathe in the same rhythm. The Zoom window blurred as his eyes stung. He blinked hard. It wasn't just about the forgotten birthday. It was the message behind it, that he didn't matter enough to notice. That their lives had moved on, wrapped in new beginnings and celebrations he wasn't really part of. He was a footnote. A background character in his own family. A cold, hollow bitterness settled in his chest. Not anger, just the slow, bitter realization that love doesn't always look like you want it to. Sometimes it doesn't even show up at all. He sat there, motionless, as the meeting droned on without him, a soft white noise against the silence inside. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't feel forgotten. He felt discarded. The morning after the message, Ethan woke before sunrise. The city outside still slept, wrapped in gray fog and quiet. He sat at his kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone lukewarm. He had replayed Ava's text in his mind 100 times, searching for something he knew wasn't there: consideration, remorse, or even just awareness. But this morning felt different. No more stewing. No more rehearsed conversations in the shower or in the dark. No more waiting for someone else to care first. He opened the Venmo app. His thumb hovered over the keyboard for a moment. Then, with a soft breath, he typed, $1. Caption: "Congrats on the baby. I won't be attending." He stared at the words for a second, then hit send. $1 wasn't just a gesture, it was a boundary. Final. Quietly defiant. There was no dramatic satisfaction. No adrenaline rush. Just stillness. Later that afternoon, Ethan walked to the hardware store, picked up a new set of locks, and changed them himself. The metallic clicks echoed through his apartment, unfamiliar and sharp. It was an oddly intimate act, rewriting who could enter his life, physically and otherwise. Then, one by one, he blocked each family contact. No angry texts. No explanations. Just space. And with each tap, a strange dual current pulsed through him, anxiety clinging to the edges of his chest, whispering, "What if this is too much?" But beneath it, something else stirred. Something small and brave. Not the peace that comes from fixing something, but the kind that blooms after you finally stop trying to. He sat on his couch that evening, alone but not lonely, the silence no longer hollow but whole. 2 quiet days passed. Ethan began to feel the edges of calm taking root, fragile but real. He worked from the cafe down the block, sketched in his notebook again, even watched a movie without checking his phone. Then, that morning, his phone buzzed with a notification that twisted his stomach. Suspicious login attempt detected on joint savings account. His breath caught. That account had sat untouched for over a year, just a quiet fund he'd once built to be helpful, to be the reliable one, the fixer, the good son. Back then it felt like love. Now it felt like a weapon turned against him. He logged in, trembling fingers scrolling past line items, searching for any breaches. None. Without hesitation, he shut it down. Every cent moved to a personal account. Passwords changed. Access revoked. A second attempt came hours later. Then, at 3:12 a.m., his phone lit up with a new message from an unknown number. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." No greeting. No name. But he didn't need one. Ava's tone was unmistakable, sharp with entitlement, laced with blame. Not a trace of concern for his boundaries. Only frustration that her hand no longer reached his pocket. Ethan read the message in silence. No anger this time, just a slow-burning clarity. They weren't upset because he had done something wrong. They were upset because, for once, he hadn't complied. He didn't reply. Instead, he sat at his desk, lit a candle, and opened a fresh document titled, "My Life on My Terms." The anxiety hadn't left, not fully. But in its place grew something stronger, a resolve, fierce and unfamiliar. Not the Ethan who smiled through being forgotten. Not the brother who paid in silence. This Ethan? He was done being broken into. It was a Saturday morning, and for once, the light in Ethan's apartment felt warm. He was slicing an orange, humming to himself, when the knock came, loud, heavy, deliberate. Not the kind of knock friends use. Through the peephole, 2 officers in uniform. Ethan opened the door slowly, confusion already rising in his chest. "Ethan Wells?" the taller officer asked. He nodded. "Your family filed a missing person report. Said you weren't responding to calls or messages. That they feared for your safety." Ethan blinked. A soft, dry laugh escaped before he could stop it. "I'm not missing," he said, gesturing behind him toward the apartment. "I'm right here, just living my life." Quietly. The shorter officer looked around, eyes scanning the hallway as if gauging a threat. "Mind if we step inside?" He let them in. Offered water. Explained the truth, gently, without bitterness. The birthday. The text. The locked accounts. The $1 message. They listened, mostly in silence. When it was over, the taller one gave a faint nod, his voice kind. "You're within your rights. You're not in any trouble." But he glanced at his partner, then back at Ethan. If your family feels shut out, they might try again. Escalate. We've seen it happen before. That word, escalate, lodged in Ethan's chest like a splinter. After they left, the apartment felt different. Still his, still safe, but edged with something colder. He sat on the couch, phone in his lap, staring at the unread messages from unknown numbers. It wasn't guilt that came. It was fear dressed as doubt. What if they really believe I'm the villain? What if this gets worse? But underneath that fear, steady as breath, came another thought. Let them escalate. I won't. It was late afternoon, golden lights spilling across the hardwood floors. Ethan had just started to feel the quiet settle around him again, until the doorbell rang. Not once, but in short, sharp bursts. He froze. Through the peephole, Ava and their mother, Helen. He hesitated, heart thudding. Then slowly, cautiously, he opened the door just a crack. Enough to see their faces, enough for them to see his. Ethan, Helen began, voice already edged with disapproval, we need to talk. He kept his hand firmly on the door. You could have called. You blocked us, Ava snapped. Ethan didn't flinch. I had to. Helen's voice rose. You're abandoning your family. Over what? A birthday? A misunderstanding? His jaw clenched. That familiar mixture of disbelief and pain bubbled up again, like hot water under thin ice. No, he said slowly. I'm protecting myself. From a family that only remembers I exist when I'm useful, or when I disobey. You're overreacting, Ava said, crossing her arms. This isn't like you. Ethan looked at her. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then his voice came out low, steady and tired. You don't know what I'm like. You stopped trying years ago. Helen's expression twisted. We gave you everything. Ethan's eyes flashed. You gave me guilt. Expectations. Silence when I needed presence. A beat of stunned silence. You're being cruel, Helen said, voice trembling. No, he whispered. I'm being honest. They started to speak again. He couldn't even hear what, because suddenly it all felt like noise. The same old loop, wearing new disguises. He slammed the door. The click of the deadbolt echoed like a punctuation mark. And for the first time in years, Ethan leaned back against that closed door and let himself breathe, deeply, fully. Not out of relief, but because the truth had finally been said. The next morning, Ethan sat at his desk, phone in hand, cursor blinking on a half-written email. The events of the last week played on a loop in his mind, each memory sharper than the last. The door slam. The accusation. The absence on his birthday. The cops. He didn't want revenge. But he wanted truth. And for once, he wanted it documented. He dialed his lawyer. By that afternoon, the audit was in motion. Bank statements, Venmo records, old texts, years of quietly covering family costs. It had all been so casual then. Can you spot us for a few months? We'll pay you back soon. You're doing well, help us out a little. No receipts. No thanks. Just expectations. It took 5 days. When the full report came in, Ethan stared at the PDF in stunned silence. $159,742.17. That's what he had given, over 7 years. Ava's wedding venue. Helen and George's second mortgage. Car repairs. College loans for a cousin he hadn't spoken to in 3 years. He printed it. Stared at the neat lines, the damning totals. For a moment, he didn't know if he wanted to cry or laugh. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was the story the numbers told. A story where he'd been the invisible backbone, and nobody had noticed until he said no. He opened the family group chat. For the first time in weeks, he unblocked the thread, breathing in as he typed. Detached the audit. Then wrote, I want it all back. Every penny. He hit send. No anger. No emojis. Just silence after. A strange sense of calm filled the space where guilt used to live. Let them read it. Let them squirm. Let the truth do what words couldn't. The silence didn't last. By the second day, Ethan's voicemail began to fill, each message more frantic than the last. His father's gravelly voice trembled with performative remorse. Son, we're family. Family helps each other. We gave you life. Then Helen, we're drowning, Ethan. You wouldn't let your mother drown, would you? Her sobs bled into static, desperate, and theatrical. He deleted them. The third message that afternoon was different. A deep sigh before a clipped voice. Ava. So this is who you are now. Cold. Selfish. You think money makes you better than blood. Still, he said nothing. A few days later, another notification. This time from a local consignment shop, an alert he had set up years ago when shopping for vintage furniture. He blinked. His parents' old Buick had been listed. Then their antique sideboard, his grandmother's. Family heirlooms, gone piece by piece. Pawned or sold. He didn't feel triumphant. Just hollow. The final blow came that evening. A text from Ava. You're killing Mom. Ethan stared at the screen. His heart didn't race anymore. He wasn't shocked. He was simply tired, bone-deep tired of the games, the guilt, the shape-shifting rules of love in their family. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately as he typed back. You did that when you started using me like a credit card. He hit send and muted the thread again. Outside his apartment window, Seattle's sky turned a gentle shade of violet, soft, slow, and forgiving. Inside, Ethan closed his laptop and sat still. For once, he wasn't negotiating his worth in someone else's narrative. This wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. And clarity, he realized, was the most generous thing he'd ever given himself. The call came just after sunset, when the city began to glow in amber and streetlight gold. Ethan saw the name flash across his screen. Dad, and for a moment, his breath caught. He didn't want to answer. But something in him needed to hear it, if only to be sure. He picked up. Mark's voice was low. Steady. The kind of quiet that used to precede punishments in childhood. If you go through with this, his father said, we'll lose everything. The house. Car. Your mother and I will be homeless. No anger. No shouting. Just a carefully wielded calm, like a scalpel. Ethan sat with the silence for a moment, letting the weight of the words drift in and settle. He looked around his apartment, the plants he watered every Sunday, the sketches on his wall, the half-read books, the birthday cake still in the freezer. He exhaled, slow and full. Then maybe, he said finally, voice clear but steady, you'll learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then the call ended. That night, Ethan emailed his lawyer and initiated the legal proceedings to force a buyout of his share in the family property. It was a move he'd been too afraid to make for years, a final thread ready to be cut. There was no joy in it, only necessity. A quiet tragedy wrapped in self-preservation. Later, standing by the window, he watched the lights of passing cars flicker across the ceiling. He thought about the boy he used to be, the one who handed over his dreams, one sacrifice at a time, for love that never came back the same way. This wasn't vengeance. It was the end of a story he hadn't written, but had been forced to live. And now, finally, he was picking up the pen. Weeks had slipped by, like shadows moving slowly across the walls of a room left empty too long. The house, the anchor that once held together so much of Ethan's past, was finally sold. The final paperwork was signed, and the money, $42,000, quietly transferred into his account. Ethan sat alone at his kitchen table, the glow of the laptop screen painting soft blue light across his face. He stared at the numbers, steady but strangely hollow. Victory, if this was victory, didn't arrive with fireworks or celebration. It came wrapped in a quiet, heavy stillness that pressed gently against his chest. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply as memories flickered behind his eyelids, birthday candles that never burned bright with laughter, the subtle cracks beneath family smiles, the night spent wondering if he was ever truly seen. Sometimes, Ethan whispered to the silence, his voice barely audible, choosing yourself means letting go of people you once called home. Even if that home never truly existed for you. There was a bittersweet clarity in that truth. Freedom wasn't light. It wasn't a sudden rush of happiness or the end of pain. It was a slow unwrapping, a careful learning to walk without the weight of old wounds dragging behind. He looked out the window where the city pulsed with life, unaware of the quiet battles fought in quiet rooms. And in that moment, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a fragile hope. Not of forgetting or erasing the past, but of building something new from its fragments, something real and his own. The cost of freedom was high. But perhaps it was the only price worth paying. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your peace? Tell us in the comments. I read every story. And if Ethan's story resonated with you, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. You never know who might need to hear it.